And then that person might go out and totally redeem themselves, and you come out looking like a bit of a jerk. Justin Fry is interviewing with the Chicago Bears. I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name, the season of dreams.
So JUCK over with Menace to Sports.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks on a Thursday. Appreciate you guys so much for joining me. We got a lot to get to today. We got some recruiting talk, some rankings have changed, some big news for the Buckeyes in that department, some potential coaching issues to talk about, and I need to make a mea culpa. I need to make a mea culpa because that's what a man does, and when you're wrong, you correct it. So I'm going to do that today. But first, on Tuesday night, I'm so irritated. On Tuesday night, the news comes out that Michigan's response to the NCAA has been leaked. So we all read the response, and I come on here and I give a really, really fair synopsis of this report, right? It was totally fair. I may have made a couple jokes here or there. I didn't even offer up my opinion. Like it was just straight up, here's what it is, because it was a confusing read. It was back and forth. It was all over the place. And I just kind of wrapped it up in a tidy bow. And I thought that a lot of Ohio State fans might like to hear that, just to know what's going on without reading this long article. So that's what I did. And by the views the video got, I can tell that a lot of people did like it. Now, whenever I do a video that is about another fan base, the name of my show is JUCK on Bucks College Football Show. I talk about all college football, but it's clearly from an Ohio State slant, and that's obvious in the title. And just based on that fact, the comments are going to be very negative. So I avoid them unless it's them. If it's them, I'll go in and see what they have to say. And wouldn't you know it, of course, the most common things are I'm trying to make excuses for Ohio State losing, or they live in our head rent-free, as if this wasn't the biggest story on Tuesday in the offseason. And there's not exactly a lot of things going on in college football. That show led like every college football show. But because I'm an Ohio State fan, of course, it had all these ulterior motives to it. If it was Florida State in that same position, I would have done the same show about it. Might have waited till the following morning, but I'd have done the same show. Now, when we talk about this double standard, it doesn't just go to them talking to us. I want you to look at this here. So this is On3 tweeting this out. New, Michigan is fighting allegations from the NCAA regarding the Connor Stallion sign stealing scandal. Now, this is their own employee tweeting at this. JD Pickle. He's a podcast host for On3, and he says Michigan won a natty, and then Ohio State just won a natty. Let's just call it a day at this point. Now, what in the world does Ohio State have to do with that? What in the world does Ohio State winning a natty have to do with that? The NCAA is going after Michigan, not Ohio State. And I just feel like there's this feeling by a lot of folks that somehow we're involved in this, and I don't know where it came from. Could it be that their media pushed that Ryan Day and his brother were behind this whole thing the whole time? That they hired a PI firm to go illegally investigate Michigan? Obviously, that story was ridiculous from the start. It was so ridiculous that when it caught fire, I really thought it was just a joke that some of these Michigan folks were repeating it. Not that they actually believed it, but they did. And they did because their media was telling them that. Sam Webb, Chris Bayless, Isaiah Hole, like the main guys in Michigan media that they respect the most, their most respected voices, were leaning into this. Here's an old tweet from Scam Webb. Web blog, what school hired a private investigator firm to investigate Michigan? More on my prime suspect with Ryan Day. Like, I'm not making this up. This is a real thing. They really thought that Ryan Day was investigating Michigan, hiring a private eye firm. It's just insanity when you think about it. And when it comes out that it came from inside the house, that it was someone within Michigan, you would think the guys in that position would apologize, would correct it. You would think that's what they do, but no, they're doubling down. This is Isaiah Hole. Now, you may remember him from the Connor Stallions documentary, an admitted friend to Connor Stallions in that documentary, publishes Wolverines Wire for the USA Today, also the host of Locked On Wolverines. And if you've been watching for this show for any amount of time, you know how I feel about the Locked On family of podcasts. It's trash. He's not. He's actually pretty good at podcasting, just, from one guy to the next, looking at it. He's pretty skilled. He's not bad at all. I think he's pretty good. Obviously, I disagree with everything he says, but I think he's pretty good at podcasting. However, he pushed this Ryan Day thing. And when he was asked about it on Twitter, he answered like this. I'll respond by saying prominent people within the Michigan program did and still do likely believe that is still the case. I'm only reporting that for that reason. If it's wrong, then so be it. So he's standing by it. If it's wrong, then so be it, which is not really the way most people would operate here. Most people would say, if I have a source and I put my name on it and put it out on the airwaves, now it's me. Now it's me saying it. And now it's me saying something wrong to my audience. So it's up to me to correct it, not throw it back to the source. And he didn't only say it. He promoted it. He believed it just like they all did. And obviously, it's totally ridiculous. He and his source were clearly wrong. And instead of just saying, yeah, I got that wrong, what a ridiculous story, I can't believe I believe that, he passes the buck. Even though that report said it's someone from Michigan, and Michigan is actively trying to find out who this person is, wants to have a meeting with the NCAA to talk about that individual who the NCAA is keeping secret from them. By the way, he claims that Michigan knows who that person is. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I look back at Tattoo Gate and I look at how the Ohio State media was. They were the enemy of Ohio State. They were breaking stories to the national media. They were going after Ohio State in a way that many Ohio State fans were really angry at them. And everything out of Michigan is the exact opposite. They defend every single thing. They push fake narratives, ridiculous narratives. It's just wild, man. I'm not trying to come after that guy specifically. It's more about the entire attitude here, from Bayless to Sam Webb, to like all of them, all the publications. It's been nothing but we're in the corner of the regime and we're going to do whatever it takes to keep them safe. Like that's the way it's felt, all the way down to pushing a narrative about Ryan Day and a private eye, which, as silly as college football is, if that were true, that would be the silliest thing we've ever seen. It really would. So, as I said, you get things wrong all the time when you put yourself on record. I do it all the time. Sometimes you might come after someone with a little bit of vitriol, and then that person might go out and totally redeem themselves, and you come out looking like a bit of a jerk. Justin Fry is interviewing with the Chicago Bears. And I know some of you have been waiting on this one. Now, not only have I been critical of Justin Fry, I've been downright mean at times to Justin Fry. My previous intro featured me saying, Justin Fry, what are you doing? Now, I never downplayed Justin Fry's ability as a coach. My opinion on that, and people would badmouth him. Obviously we're talking during this season, talk about his lack of development and things of that nature. And my thought is, I think every offensive line coach needs at least 3 full years before you could say one way or the other whether or not this person is a good developer of talent, because it does take so long with offensive linemen. Well, now we're past year 3. And I defended him to people who said he was lousy. He wasn't lousy. I didn't think we had enough information yet. I certainly didn't praise him for that. Now, we just watched a championship caliber offensive line. By definition, if you win a national championship, every unit on that team was championship caliber. Offensive line on this team was hit by the most injuries, and not just the most injuries, but the best guys. Austin Sareveld, Luke Montgomery, 2 second-year guys coming in and playing through a championship run, being able to win in those playoff games against those teams with those defensive lines without them wrecking you, that would be an amazing feat. To be able to do it without the offensive line looking not so good, that would be a pretty good achievement. But to be able to do it with the offensive line looking good, not just looking okay or not being a liability, but looking good. Triple amazing feat. 3 times amazing. 4 times amazing. And yeah, it's true. Some scheme stuff changed. You did everything you could to work them out and help them. None of that matters. You got a group of young guys playing out of position, and you got them to play like that on their way to a national championship. And they did it with attitude. They did it with attitude. They did it like Buckeyes. You had Luke Montgomery just showing all that personality, horns down against Texas. And the way they did it looked like a unit that has a guy leading them that made me feel good, made me feel real good. So all that said, you got to give credit where credit's due. I was certainly wrong to go after him as hard as I did before I gave him the 3 years that I said I would give him. Now, obviously, I disagree with his recruiting strategies. I've talked about it ad nauseum. You probably don't want to hear about it anymore. There are some things that he does on the recruiting trail that drive me insane. Didn't seem to be willing to put forth the effort at this level. And when you hear some stories over and over again from people in the know, and I mean direct recruits, it seems like he'd be much better suited at a place like UCLA or Indiana that doesn't need to recruit at this level because he doesn't seem to like it at all. What never crossed my mind was maybe the NFL is a possibility for Justin Fry, and maybe it is. As he's interviewing with the Chicago Bears, who knows what comes of that? Who knows if he gets other interviews in the NFL? But what it certainly says is this is a super well-respected guy at the position now when it comes to coaching an offensive line, which, let's be honest, coaching a position group is a totally different job than recruiting kids out of high school. Those skills don't often overlap. The guys who can do them both, like a Brian Hartline, they're just very rare. But we're not looking for Brian Hartline level recruiting. Now, I don't think he'll get that. I'm talking, we don't need that at the offensive line. I don't think he'll get the job with the Bears, which means I think he'll be back at Ohio State. And in 2026, it is set up for him beautifully at Ohio State to bring in an offensive line haul that is not only top notch, but he has relationships with them all already. They are all, most of them, close by, and it's going to be a beast of a unit. And now he can sell Montgomery. Austin Sareveld and Luke Montgomery in their second year. He can sell that to guys in year 2. He's got Simmons and McLaughlin to sell to transfers. He's got Donovan to sell to versatile guys. He's got all the boxes checked. So there's really no excuse not to be able to pull an amazing line class here. Portal performance, you got Daniels, you got Anyanwa. Those are big-time pulls in the portal. And again, I don't like that we had to go into the portal needing those guys, but you got it done. I credit coaches less with winning in the portal because so much of it is about the deal, but you still get some credit for winning in the portal. He certainly didn't lose them like he did with Isaiah World, the number 1 tackle in the portal, when he said he was thinking about using him for guard or tackle and pretty much blew that up right off the rip. The guy's just an enigma, man. I mean, I just can't recall a guy who has now proven so damn much at his position and just been so oddly frustrating on the recruiting trail. So that's where the "what are you doing" came from in the intro. That said, Ryan Day says 50% of the job for his coaches, actually 51. The most important thing is getting dudes for your room. And with the portal, you now got the dudes for your room. However, that's money you couldn't spend elsewhere. All in all, the point is, in 2026, it's teed up. I no longer want him to be somewhere else in 2026. I want him to be right at Ohio State. And I want him to go get us Micah Smith and Max Riley and Sam Greer and Adam Guthrie, Darius Gray. And if I can't get those guys, there are some other guys we got relationships with, but that right there is a solid core without having to lean on dudes like Emmanuel Ahianachu or Jackson Cantwell, the big top dudes, right? The Jordan Seatons and David Sanders of this class. You don't need them. You got dudes right here and a couple ancillary pieces that you got relationships with. Bring them in. Close the deal so we can all get behind this, man, because I want to, because I was not 100% correct, that's for sure. And I was certainly rude in the way I came about it. And for that, I apologize. Now, I hope the Bears don't hire him. I really do. I really do, which is amazing. When I first saw that, I went, oh, and I felt it in my chest. I don't want him to go. But he could go to the Bears. He could get the job, and we could be looking for a defensive coordinator, an offensive line coach, and potentially an offensive coordinator. Now, I've said about this Chip Kelly thing, there are a lot of NFL teams interested, and we know that before he left UCLA, he wanted to go to the NFL. He wanted to go to the Seahawks for their OC position. That's where he'd rather be. That's pretty clear. He was just out recruiting the other day. He was in California visiting Brady Smigel. And just Wednesday, a tweet came out that he was visiting Jared Curtis. Jared Curtis was committed to Georgia. And actually, he was a heavy Buckeye lean before Corey Dennis left, then committed to Georgia. He has since decommitted from Georgia, so he's on the market. Class of 2026 quarterback. Chip went and saw him too. Chip, not crazy about recruiting. We know that. We've always known that about the Chipster. So he definitely wants to go to the NFL. I guess my only question is, you know how this used to go, right? Urban, bring an assistant coach. They'd give him a 2-year commitment. And it just kind of feels like most of these situations like that's kind of the deal. Like you're kind of expected to give me 2 years, right? When you win a national championship, do things change? Is everything off the table at that point because the deals that come in for everybody are just that much more amped up? I don't know. I just feel like it would be pretty crappy to leave your dude after 1 year. Who knows? Maybe Ryan Day would encourage him to because that's their kind of relationship. I don't know. I would hate to see him go after year one, though. And I would hate to have to see the Buckeyes have a brand new offensive and defensive coordinator heading into next year because you got such young guys. Now, if you're switching around a system, you can also say it's advantageous to do it with a bunch of young guys rather than a bunch of older guys, because with the older guys, you're expected to win now. If you bring in this new system now when they're younger, well, 2026, you're not looking to win anything big. You're looking for 27. 27 is going to be your target year in that case. But the Buckeyes are built in a way that I think they can be, we're going to win now every year. And I just would hate to have to replace both in 1 year. But anyway, as we discussed, the Buckeyes did an excellent job in player retention in that 5-day window after the national championship game when guys could hit the portal, losing just 4 guys. And those 4 guys, Hero Kanu, Gabe Powers went to Kansas State, Mitchell Melton went to Virginia, Calvin Simpson Hunt went to Baylor. Hero Kanu has found his landing spot. Hero Kanu, one of the most popular players at the Woody for the past couple of years, a guy who played a lot in 24, would have played a lot in 25, and he's now committed to another contender. Hero's going to Texas. Texas sent a lot of guys to the draft this year, and they've got some open spots, but they've also brought in a couple other transfers, a dude from North Carolina, a kid from Purdue. They got some homegrown players who are going to step up. I don't know that Hero's guaranteed to get any more playing time than he would have got at Ohio State down at Texas. So it just sucks, man. I really liked Hero, and I was hoping he would stick around. That one really shocked me. So that sucked, but I hate that we got to play against him week 1 because it's not going to go good for him and his Longhorns when they come up into the shoe week 1. And we got to talk a little recruiting today. So, in fact, we're going to talk quite a bit of recruiting in the coming weeks. If you don't know, if you're new to the show, and we got a lot of new viewers, I am very big into Ohio State recruiting, college football recruiting in general. I love to cover it on the show during the off season. Like to show highlights of the prospects that the Buckeyes are in on. And thanks to the growth of the show, it's continued to open more doors for me to be able to talk to guys and get some information. And I got to talk about Duve Williams today. So Duve Williams is the number one cornerback in the class of 2027. I'm talking like a step ahead of everybody else at that position. Like Devin Sanchez is so clearly the number one corner in 2025. Duve Williams in 2027, same thing. Again, it's at 2027. We're talking a couple years from now. The number one cornerback in the country got offers from everybody. Alabama, Georgia, whole country, nationwide recruit out of California. And he got a Buckeye offer the other day. But he didn't get a Buckeye offer from Tim Walton. He got a Buckeye offer from Brian Hartline. It's the only offer from a wide receiver coach. Everybody else is recruiting him to play corner. He doesn't have an offer from Tim Walton. He said he would love to play both sides of the ball. And watching his film, we could have something special on our hands here. It's interesting, though, because we're talking about the number one defensive back that Walt wasn't in on. Hartline is. What if Walt now wants him? Are they going to argue about it between the two of them? Like, who gets him? Like, this is kind of an interesting situation to be in. We talked about this briefly last year with Brandon Finney, who ended up going to Oregon, who is an excellent wide receiver and an excellent corner. He said he would love to play both sides of the ball. But when I asked him if you had to pick one, which would it be? He said defense. And that's something that has been a trend for like 5 years. We're seeing so many of these guys who otherwise would have been wide receivers, give me the ball, go over and play corner and be happy with playing corner, because they're looking at these big contracts and these long careers these corners are always getting in the NFL, always in demand. And it's really interesting, and it's really balancing that out. So at any rate, we need to get that offer from Walt, but he was very, thought it was really cool that Hartline came and saw him immediately after seeing Chris Henry Jr. and Caden Dixon-Wyatt Chris committed Caden Dixon-Wyatt a target, both at Mater Dei. So pretty cool story out of California. Now, all right. Now, for those of you with the Urban Meyer mentality of if they're keeping score, I want to win. I do too. We pushed really hard, tracked really the whole cycle, hoping that the Buckeyes could potentially win the mythical recruiting crown in 2025. They've never won one. And when the early signing day came and went, the Buckeyes finished 5th. It's a top 5 class. That's where you want to be. That's great. But was really hoping to get that, as they were in position almost from start to finish as the number one class in 2025. Top 5, it's great. It wins you national championships, puts you in position every year. But I just wanted it one time. Anyway, they finished 5th on the early signing day. Texas was number 1, followed by Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, and Ohio State. Did not like being behind Oregon, but since that time, we've seen Dallas Wilson, a 5-star wide receiver who was committed to Oregon, leave that class and go down to Florida. And what that did was put Ohio State over Oregon and move them into 4th position. Now, not everybody cared about that, but it made me really happy. Then one of our favorite wide receivers here at JUCK on Bucks, as 24/7 has finished their rankings now for the year, Quincy Porter. Now, throughout the recruiting process, all the buzz was around, for Ohio State fans, Jamie French. Jamie French, 5-star wide receiver from South Florida, was committed to Alabama, then decommitted, and was all Buckeye for a long time. Then out of the blue, on threes, Chad Simmons drops his top 4, and Ohio State wasn't in it. It was like they were an afterthought. And this created a ton of drama. A ton of drama. Was there a mistake? What happened? No news. The dude just liked to play the game. And he was good at it, and he had fun at it. And I don't knock him. If I was 18, I might have done the same thing. But ultimately, he ends up signing at Texas. So he goes to Texas. And my point throughout that drama was it didn't matter, because Hartline was on Quincy Porter, and Quincy Porter is a better prospect. We showed film. You guys agreed with me every time we watched it. Now, Quincy Porter at the time was a 4-star, top 20 wide receiver in the country, but he was flat out a better prospect. Not to mention, when you listen to him, he sounds like a Mecca Ibuka instead of Chad Johnson. No knock on Chad Johnson or Jamie French, but Jamie French, the new Chad Johnson, doesn't really vibe with the Ohio State wide receiver room, in my opinion. Anyway, 24/7 has now finished their rankings, and wouldn't you know it, Quincy Porter is now a composite 5-star in 24/7, a 5-star from 24/7 and from On3. He is the dude. Jamie French, no longer a 5-star. Quincy Porter, the considerably higher ranked prospect, as we knew all along. And now when we look back at the wide receiver class that Brian Hartline pulled, and we look at Quincy Porter in the real light, like when he signed, it was a 4-star, and people were like, yeah, I mean, he got a good one, but it's not a banger. Quincy Porter is a banger, and it looks fantastic now. So the big news here on that is more than Quincy Porter getting his bump. It moved Ohio State's class into number 3. So instead of a top 5 class, Ohio State now has a top 3 class, and that'll be finalized next week. So from 5 to 3 is a pretty damn big move, and I'm really happy about it. Let's take a look at those other classes in the top 5 here before we wrap. So Georgia, with another ridiculous defensive line class, they got the number 1 defensive lineman, Elijah Griffin, the number 1 edge rusher, Isaiah Gibson, and the number 1 linebacker, Zayden Walker. All 3 of those dudes, Georgians, going to Georgia. The number 4 edge rusher and the number 7 edge rusher to go with them. 4 out of 5 of those dudes from the state of Georgia. So it must be nice, man. It must be nice. Then we got Alabama. Alabama nailed the 3 big positions. Quarterback, the number 2 quarterback in the country, Keelan Russell. Offensive tackle, the number 1 offensive tackle, Michael Carroll. Cornerback, the number 2 corner, Dijon Lee. And they added the number 2 safety, Ivan Taylor, who was committed to Michigan, so we're happy that they got him. Then we got the Buckeyes. Buckeyes go 5-star quarterback, number 1 cornerback, and 5-star wide receiver. Riley Pettijohn did not end up finishing with his 5th star. He had it from one service at one point. No longer gets it. In fact, 247 has him out of their top 100, which I find really obnoxious, but we all know what Riley Pettijohn's made of. Total stud. Love this Buckeyes class. Absolutely love it. We'll go over it a little more as we get into some more recruiting here in the next week. Now, Oregon, their class was a DB loaded class. They had 5-star Trey McNutt, who was at one point the number 1 safety, and very proud of that. Not going to finish the number 1 safety from any of the services. So still a 5-star, though. Still a 5-star. At corner, they got 5-star Naeem Offord, Dorian Brew, who was a 5-star at one point, won't finish a 5-star. Brandon Finney was a 5-star, won't finish a 5-star. And it's a really good class. I really like Oregon's class. Then you've got Auburn, LSU, Michigan at number 8, Texas A&M at number 9, and Florida at number 10. Now, Michigan at number 8, the best class they've had in ages, and they're about to land Ty Hayward. That's a 5-star offensive lineman, a tackle. Those guys are hard to come. We can't ever seem to bag one. Not only do they have him, they have Andrew Babalola, Andrew Babalola, another 5-star tackle. So we're talking about 2 5-star tackles in Michigan's class to go along with Avery Gotch, who is an interior offensive lineman that they beat us for that we really wanted, and Caden Strayhorn, who is a center that they beat us for that we really wanted at one point. Not really wanted, but we wanted. Came for an official, and they got him. Now, both those 2 dudes I just mentioned at the end there, Michiganders, so not a big deal. They should have gone up there anyway. But getting the 2 5-star tackles, pretty damn impressive, and something that obviously we haven't been able to do. And it's going to take their class from number 8 and bump it even higher, which is incredibly impressive. Now, when we look at where they have been, top 15, that's poor. That's poor for where they should be, in my opinion. And now they've got some money. They've parlayed successfully their national championship into some better recruiting, and they've now got the money to compete. So that's what's going on with them. Now, Tomorrow, we're going to get into some of the film and some of my favorites in the class of 26. There are some dudes I really love in this class of 2026. And while there are only 4 guys committed right now, I think we're about to see some real momentum here coming up soon. No need to worry.